Brothers and sisters, if you're black and proud, then you need to understand what that truly means. It's not just a slogan. It's not a fashion statement. It's not a song lyric or a trendy hashtag. Being black and proud means you know who you are, where you come from, and you're no longer asking permission to be free. If you're black and proud, then you're done begging. You're done waiting. You're done knocking on the doors of a system that was never built with you in mind. You don't ask for a seat at the table. You build your own table, and you sit at the head of it. That's what pride looks like. If you're black and proud, then you recognize that your history didn't begin in chains. You were not born enslaved, you were enslaved. There's a difference. You come from kingdoms, from architects, from warriors, from thinkers, from builders of civilizations. And if you're proud, you carry that knowledge like armor in a world that profits from your confusion. If you're black and proud, then you stop apologizing for your skin, your hair, your name, your voice, your power. You stop trimming yourself to fit into someone else's definition of acceptable. You were not made to shrink, you were made to rise. If you're black and proud, then you must understand that pride without power is empty, and identity without independence is incomplete. To be proud of who you are is more than an emotional feeling, it's a political stance. It's a declaration of self-worth in a world that's been designed to make you forget. But pride cannot survive in submission. It cannot live in silence. Black pride demands self-determination, not permission. You cannot truly be proud of your blackness if your livelihood, your education, your safety, and your destiny all depend on approval from someone else. You cannot say you are proud and still ask the same system that dehumanized you to save you. Self-determination means you define who you are, where you're going, and how you'll get there. It means you don't wait for the dominant culture to accept you, validate you, or embrace you. You know your value before they see it, if they ever do. You don't mold yourself into their idea of respectable. You define respect on your own terms. You don't ask to be seen. You stand up and demand to be acknowledged. And not with hat in hand, but with your back straight and your head high. For generations, we've been told to wait. We've been told that if we just play by the rules, if we just prove ourselves, if we just stay quiet and be good, then eventually we'll be accepted. But when has that ever worked? How long are we supposed to wait? How many more lives have to be destroyed before we realize that the house we're knocking on was never meant for us? The doors weren't locked by accident. They were designed that way. They were built to keep us out, not to let us in. Self-determination means you stop knocking. You turn away from the door. You build your own. We were not made to be permanent guests in someone else's empire. We were not meant to survive on the crumbs that fall from the table of those who profit from our suffering. If you're black and proud, then you must reclaim ownership. Ownership of your name, your history, your body, your labor, your future. No one is going to give that to you. You have to seize it. Not through violence for the sake of violence, but through a radical shift in how you see yourself and how you move in this world. The education of black children must be rooted in truth, not the whitewashed, sanitized history that begins with slavery and ends with civil rights, but the full story. The story of African civilizations, of scientific and cultural innovation, of resistance and brilliance that existed long before colonizers arrived. Self-determination means teaching your children that their blackness is not a burden. It is not a deficit, it is a crown. Too often we have allowed others to define us, to name us, to narrate our story, to limit our potential. We've accepted roles that were given to us instead of writing our own script. But you cannot be proud of a version of yourself that is filtered through someone else's lens. You cannot love yourself while living under the constant need to be accepted by those who see your very existence as a threat. Self-determination is the practice of declaring every single day, I know who I am, and I don't need your permission to be it. This is not about separation. It's about sovereignty. It's about no longer placing your survival in the hands of a system that was built to benefit from your oppression. It's about refusing to let your oppressor be your savior. Pride that doesn't lead to power is decoration. It's a mask. It's something you wear during celebrations, but take off when it's time to make decisions. If you're black and proud, then your pride must come with a plan. That plan begins with self-determination. In every sector, economics, education, health, media, we must begin to build and support our own. Because relying on others to sustain us while claiming to be proud is a contradiction. You cannot praise blackness while depending on whiteness for your daily bread. You cannot say you are proud and still fear speaking the truth because it might offend someone with more power. Self-determination means telling the truth even when it's uncomfortable. It means standing firm even when it's unpopular. There is nothing radical about wanting to control your own future. There is nothing extreme about wanting to own your labor, your land, your narrative. But in a world that has grown fat off of your exploitation, any move toward independence will always be labeled as dangerous. That's the cost of pride backed by purpose. The system doesn't fear your slogans, it fears your organization. It doesn't fear your identity, it fears your unity. Because once you realize that you don't need their validation, once you understand that your worth was never up for negotiation, you become ungovernable by their lies. Self-determination means putting your trust not in political promises, not in temporary allies, but in your people. It means creating structures that serve your community, not just reflect it. It means prioritizing your own survival over their comfort. If you are truly proud, then you no longer wait to be led, you begin to lead. You no longer ask to be included, you build systems where you are centered. The most dangerous kind of black person is one who knows they don't need to be saved. One who knows they already have everything they need to liberate themselves if they organize, if they study, if they act. Pride is not a substitute for action. It is the fuel, but the engine. The engine is self-determination. And without that, pride is just noise. Freedom is taken, not given. That's a truth history has proven time and time again. And yet it is the very truth so many still refuse to accept. Too many of our people have been conditioned to wait, to hope, to trust that somehow, someday, those who have exploited, oppressed, and dehumanized us will wake up with a change of heart and offer us the freedom we deserve. But that's not how freedom works. The oppressor never hands over the keys to the prison. You break the lock. You walk out on your own terms. When has freedom ever been a gift in this world? When has liberation ever come wrapped in kindness from the same hand that built the chains? Power doesn't surrender itself because it has a conscience. It surrenders only when it's forced to. Every freedom we've gained as a people, every inch, was fought for. It came through blood, through resistance, through sacrifice. It was never given willingly. It was taken. It was claimed. And it was earned through struggle. The idea that freedom is a matter of negotiation is a lie told to keep us passive. You cannot negotiate with a system that was built to keep you down. You cannot reason with those whose wealth depends on your poverty, whose status depends on your silence, whose comfort depends on your compliance. They will tell you to be patient, to work within the system, to believe in incremental progress. But while they're preaching patience, we are still burying our brothers and sisters. While they're promising reform, we're still being pushed to the margins, still being locked out, still being hunted, still being denied our humanity. Freedom is not about reform, freedom is about transformation. It's about breaking the old structure and building a new one. One where your dignity is not up for debate, one where your rights are not fragile, one where your life is not negotiable. That kind of freedom is not granted, it is seized. Not with weak demands or symbolic gestures, but with clarity, with strategy, and with unwavering will. They will call you angry, they will call you militant, they will say you are ungrateful. Let them talk. Let them whisper in fear when you speak with strength. Because the world only respects the bold. And if we're still asking, still pleading, still waiting, then we're telling them we don't believe in our own power. But when we stand tall and speak clearly, when we take what is rightfully ours, we force them to see what they tried to erase: our strength, our intelligence, our unity, our fire. Look around. Look at the wealth we generate. Look at the culture we create. Look at the influence we have. If we have the power to shape the world, then why are we still asking permission to be free in it? Why are we still trusting courts, corporations, and governments that have failed us time and again? Because deep down, too many have been taught that freedom comes from authority. But real freedom comes from within. It is a mindset before it is a reality. And when the mind is free, the body cannot remain in chains. You can't be half free. You can't live under someone else's rules and call it liberation. You can't depend on those who profit from your suffering and expect justice. To be free is to take control of your destiny, your economy, your education, your defense, your image, your truth. It means standing firm and refusing to compromise your principles just to be tolerated. It means refusing to accept breadcrumbs from the same table that's been feasting on your labor for generations. The longer we wait for freedom to be given, the deeper we sink into dependence. And dependence is the enemy of pride, of power, of progress. If you depend on your enemy to feed you, you'll never bite the hand that oppresses you. If you depend on your oppressor for justice, you'll always live in the shadows of injustice. Freedom must be self-made. It must come from a people who understand that their worth is not determined by the laws of the land, but by the fire in their soul. They give us symbols instead of substance. They give us holidays while they fund the institutions that destroy us. They rename buildings while they continue to lock us in cages. They paint murals while they kill us in the streets. But freedom is not a mural. It is not a moment of silence. It is not a social media post. Freedom is a condition that must be demanded. And if not granted, then taken by force of will, by force of unity, by force of knowledge and organization. This is not a call for chaos. It's a call for consciousness. Because when the people are conscious, when the people are awake, when the people understand, that their liberation lies in their own hands and nowhere else, that's when change comes. That's when the system begins to crack. That's when the illusion breaks, because the moment we stop begging, the moment we stop playing by rules that were never made for us, we shift the balance of power. You don't ask a thief to return what he stole out of guilt. You take it back because it's yours. And what's been taken from us, our time, our labor, our land, our lives, was not lost. It was stolen. Freedom means reclaiming all of it, without apology, without hesitation, without delay. Every generation has its burden. Ours is to break this cycle of waiting, of trusting, of hoping that the same system that devoured our ancestors will somehow deliver us. Freedom is not a handout. It's not a favor. It's not a prize for good behavior. Freedom is your right by birth, and if someone is standing in the way of that right, then you don't ask them to move. You make them. Economic and cultural self-reliance is essential. No people can ever claim true freedom if their survival depends on the systems of those who dominate them. You cannot call yourself independent while feeding off the hand that oppresses you. You cannot claim pride in your identity if your daily bread is baked in an oven you don't own. Economic and cultural self-reliance is not just an option. It is a foundation, a weapon, a shield, and a declaration. It is how a people survive the storm and build their future, not in someone else's image, but in their own. For far too long, black communities have been the engine that powers the prosperity of others. We have labored for the wealth of empires, served the interests of institutions, and fueled industries that give nothing back. We are the consumers, but not the controllers. We are the culture, but not the owners. We create value, but we rarely hold the value in our hands. That imbalance is no accident. It is by design. A system that needs your labor but fears your autonomy will always encourage you to spend but never to build. It will applaud your talent but never fund your independence. When we speak of economic self-reliance, we are not speaking of isolation. We are speaking of power. The power to direct your resources where they are needed most. The power to hire your own, to support your own, to sustain your own. It begins with the dollar, because the dollar is more than paper. It is a vote, a weapon, a signal of loyalty and priority. Every dollar we spend is a choice, a reflection of what and who we value. And if our communities are filled with businesses we do not own, schools we do not control, and services run by people who do not live among us, then we are funding our own marginalization. To rely on others to educate your children, feed your families, house your people, or shape your image is to live at their mercy. And when you live at someone else's mercy, your pride is a costume and your freedom is a myth. Cultural self-reliance is about reclaiming the narrative. It's about teaching our history through our own lens, preserving our language, our rituals, our names, our stories. It's about refusing to be reduced to caricatures, to stereotypes, to footnotes in someone else's history book. We must own the tools of expression. We must control the platforms through which we speak, because culture is not just art and music. Culture is memory, identity, purpose. It is the thread that binds generations. When others control your culture, they control how you see yourself and how the world sees you. They decide who your heroes are, what your tragedies mean, and what your victories look like. Cultural self-reliance is about building our own institutions of thought and expression. Museums, theaters, publishing houses, schools, and digital platforms that reflect our soul, not someone else's agenda. Economic power means land ownership, business development, investment in infrastructure. It means cooperative economics where the success of one lifts the whole. It means group economics where every dollar that comes into the community circulates before it leaves. We must learn from other groups who build wealth by keeping their resources within. We must shift from being the marketplace to being the merchants, from being the product to owning the production, from being the talent to controlling the distribution. This doesn't mean we hate anyone else. It means we love ourselves enough to stop being dependent. It means we stop begging for jobs and start creating them. It means we stop asking for representation and start becoming the ones who set the standard. Self-reliance requires discipline. It requires vision. It requires sacrifice. But it is the only path to real dignity. Because when you can feed your family without asking your enemy for a check, you move differently. When your children are taught by people who love them and see their brilliance, they learn differently. When your art is created, shared, and celebrated on your terms, it speaks differently. Too many of us have been taught to measure success by how well we fit into a system that was never meant for us. We were taught to climb ladders inside other people's houses instead of building our own. We were taught that progress means being the first black face in a white space instead of filling our own spaces with our own greatness. That is not liberation. That is tokenism dressed up as success. Real success is when our communities thrive without needing validation from the outside. When our children grow up knowing their future is not determined by whether they are accepted, but by what they choose to build. We must change the way we think about money, ownership, and value. We must teach our youth that wealth is not just what you wear or what you drive. Wealth is what you invest in your people. Wealth is knowledge passed on, businesses passed down, land preserved. We must build banks that serve us, credit unions that fund us, investment networks that protect our future. Because no one is coming to save us economically. And if we don't control our dollars, we don't control our destiny. Likewise, no one is coming to preserve our culture. If we don't record our stories, they'll vanish. If we don't support our artists, they'll be silenced or exploited. If we don't celebrate our traditions, they will be mocked, erased, or distorted. Cultural self-reliance is not a luxury. It's a necessity for survival. Because when your culture is strong, your people are anchored. When your economy is strong, your people are unshaken. There is no pride in being forever dependent. There is no future in being forever second class. Economic and cultural self-reliance is the backbone of any truly free people. Without it, we are always one crisis away from collapse, one policy away from poverty, one lie away from erasure. When we build our own, we can never be erased. When we own our own, we can never be bought out. When we tell our own stories, we can never be rewritten. Anger must be transformed into organized action. Raw emotion alone does not build power, and rage without direction is easily dismissed or destroyed. They fear our anger when it is organized. They mock it when it is scattered. They tolerate it when it is safe, when it can be contained in a slogan, a gesture, or a headline. But when that anger sharpens into strategy, when it becomes collective, intentional, and disciplined, it becomes a force that cannot be ignored, a storm that cannot be weathered, a movement that will not die. Anger is not weakness. Anger is the proper response to injustice. It is a natural reaction to oppression, to violence, to humiliation. Anger is not something to be ashamed of. It is something to be studied, cultivated, and wielded. But it must be harnessed. The system is designed to provoke you, to push you to your limit, and then punish you for reacting. It is designed to spark outrage and then distract you before you can organize it. That is why protests are allowed, but revolutions are feared. That is why venting is permitted, but vision is policed. The streets can burn for a night, but power knows that unless the fire becomes a blueprint, it will burn out and nothing will change. To be angry is not enough. You must ask, what is your anger building? What is it feeding? Who is it waking up? Where is it going? Because without organization, anger turns inward. It becomes despair. It becomes addiction. It becomes depression. It becomes violence against your own people. That is what the system hopes for. That your pain will stay in your neighborhood, that your bullets will stay in your block, that your rage will destroy your brother before it reaches the real enemy. They fear the day we decide to aim our anger higher, the day we choose not to destroy each other, but to dismantle the structure that created our suffering. Organized anger creates schools that teach truth. It builds defense committees that protect life. It builds health clinics that serve the community. It forms unions that fight exploitation. It demands justice not just in courtrooms, but in classrooms, in hospitals, in housing, in hiring, in every arena where we have been denied our full humanity. Organized anger does not wait for a headline or a tragedy. It does not wait for the cameras. It prepares in silence, builds in the shadows, and moves when the time is right. It is patient and disciplined because it knows the system it's facing has centuries of experience. We must train our people in strategy as much as we inspire them with speeches. We must give them structure as much as we stir them with slogans. Organization is what separates a moment from a movement. It is what turns anger into power and protest into policy. When you organize, you stop reacting and start shaping. You stop following and start leading. You stop begging and start demanding, not with empty hands, but with a plan in them. They want you tired. They want you overwhelmed. They want you to feel like your anger is useless. They will flood your timelines with distractions, pacify your fire with small concessions, try to shame you with civility. But there is nothing civil about injustice, and there is nothing impolite about refusing to be abused. Anger must evolve. It must become smarter. It must become coordinated. It must grow teeth. And it must be directed where it counts, not just at individuals, but at institutions. We cannot afford to be moved only by tragedy. We cannot wait for the next name, the next body, the next tear-filled press conference. That cycle is a trap. It exhausts us. It wears us down. It keeps us reacting. But when you organize your anger, you control the timing. You control the message. You control the goals. You move on your terms, not theirs. And when you move like that, they cannot predict you. They cannot contain you. They cannot co-opt you. Look back at our history. Every gain we have made came not just from passion, but from planning. From networks of committed people who were ready to sacrifice, to study, to train, to fight, not just in the streets, but in boardrooms, in city halls, in schools, in courts. The sit-ins were organized. The boycotts were organized. The strikes were organized. They were not spontaneous. They were strategic. They were not fueled by rage alone. They were sustained by purpose. The people leading them didn't just feel something. They built something. If your anger doesn't make you study your enemy, it's not serious. If your anger doesn't make you talk to your neighbor, it's not strong enough. If your anger doesn't lead to plans, meetings, actions, coalitions, then it is still in its infant stage. Let it grow. Feed it with knowledge. Sharpen it with clarity. Discipline it with love for your people. Because real anger loves its people enough not to burn them, but to build for them. It protects. It guides. It organizes. There will be those who say, calm down, who say, be patient, who say, work within the system. But the system has never worked for us, and calmness has never saved us. You don't calm down when your house is on fire. You get up. You gather the right tools. You work with others. And you put the fire out, not with emotion alone, but with action. This is not about waiting for a leader to rise. This is about becoming the leaders we need. Each one of us has a role to play. Each one of us has a responsibility to turn our pain into purpose. We cannot leave it to speeches or symbolic gestures. We must build cells, committees, collectives, and institutions. We must form strategy rooms, not just protest lines. We must study logistics, not just express grief. Because without organized anger, nothing changes. Without it, our pain is performed but never punished. Without it, they get away with murder again and again while we bury our future in silence.